Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And I'm here today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. How's it going today, Bill?
Hey, it's going good. Thank you. I'm
Yeah,
going to get a
folks.
hair. I'm going to finally get a haircut today.
Oh, nice. My barber retired about 4 months ago, and I haven't had a haircut since.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and, and anyways, yeah, and folks, I'm sorry that to disappoint everybody. Bill and I solved all of America's political issues, but we didn't have the recording started.
Oh,
So you just got to take my word for it that we did it.
Fourth of
We
July
solved it.
weekend, we solved it all.
We solved it all, but we forgot to record it. But so you just got to take our word for it. So Bill and I have all the answers.
Going to be a beautiful world moving forward from now
Yeah,
on.
there we go. All right, I want to start out because I had been criticizing the big beautiful bill over the fact that it was going to get rid of the EVs at the Postal Service. Now, the Postal Service, while they've only got 93 vehicles from Oshkosh Defense, okay, so there's some criticisms here. So there's $9 billion allocated to provide EVs going forward for the Postal Service, of which $3 billion was part of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Okay.
Oshkosh was supposed to have delivered about 3,000 of those vehicles by now, but they've only delivered 93 of the EVs. Now, they also make the same vehicle as a gas
And a
vehicle
gas
too.
model, yeah.
Yeah, so it's both. There are lots of people criticize, oh, it's good they're not going to be driving those ugly things. And it's like, but the idea was you can stand up in them. So the driver can stand up and go in and get packages instead of being hunched over in those little Jeeps they've always drove.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
the
and the
Grummins, yeah.
Grummins, and the
Yeah.
Grumman Jeeps, or whatever you call them. People still look at them as postal Jeeps, right?
Oh,
Even if they
yeah.
were made by Grumman.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyways, yeah, so as it turned out, it takes something like 60 votes or more in the Senate to cause that kind of policy change for the Postal Service. So it was left out of the final thing. So the Postal Service, but the Postal Service actually has about 9,000 EVs now. They've got Fords and other brands that they already had as EVs, which I didn't realize that they
No, I
had all
didn't
of
either.
these.
Interesting.
Let's see. The plan is to acquire a total of 106,000 new vehicles, including 66,000 battery electric vehicles. And we've got the one from Oshkosh, and then they're also using Ford e-Transits. The big issue was getting rid of the ones they had. Oh, they had approximately, okay, the bill was proposed forcing the U.S. Postal Service to sell off its EV delivery vehicles, including NGDVs and Ford e-Transits, which amounted to roughly 7,200 vehicles. Okay, so I was thinking those had all been made by Oshkosh, and only 93 of them had been made by
Yeah.
Oshkosh.
Okay.
But that 93, I think, was as of the end of last year. I don't know how many they've delivered
Since then,
so
yeah.
far this year. Now, in all fairness to Oshkosh, if for some reason they stop doing EVs, or they will just switch over to gas. So it's not, either way, Oshkosh still does okay on this. I always thought it was kind of odd that a defense manufacturer got that over
Yeah.
Workhorse.
Well,
Yeah.
apparently the previous postmaster general had some relationship with Oshkosh financially. So,
Hmm. Well, anyways, the new vehicles look kind of weird, but they are practical, and the idea is to make it easier for the postman to do their job.
yeah,
And
if it improves the efficiency of the person and the comfort of the driver, that's your first thing.
mhm,
Secondly, if it makes a more improved vehicle in terms of its efficiency and the amount of energy it uses, that's the next criteria. After that, who the frick cares what it looks like? I'm not unhappy with the design. It's a little different. We've gotten used to that block, chunky thing running around that the post office has used for I don't know what, 40 years, something like that.
Hmm.
I'm not uncomfortable with the design. Let it be a little different. Let the post office make a statement, that we're committed to a greener future and a better future for our drivers and for our service to the American public.
Yeah, it seems like it should be. It's like I've talked before. The people who drive for Amazon vastly prefer the
Oh
Rivians over
yeah.
the other vehicles,
Oh yeah.
and they're in the same boat. It's the same boat with the Postal Service. They've got just a better driving experience. Driving an electric vehicle is just a better overall experience when you're constantly starting and stopping the vehicle,
Yep.
and it saves several steps and allows them to do their job quickly. And then on the flip side, they don't need as many maintenance people for the electric vehicles.
No.
So it cuts down vastly on things like oil changes
And
and
the
other maintenance.
and the fuel, right?
Hmm.
That they don't have to use. The energy that goes into it
Hmm.
comes from American sources, and more that American source is clean, renewable energy, depending on which
Yeah.
grid you're pulling from.
Yeah. People, we still get that argument all the time about how people are using so much coal. It's only 18% of the US
No,
electrical grid
and that's
is
going
coal.
down.
Yes. Yeah. It's
Like
going down every year.
other than the current administration loves coal, right? Well, that doesn't
Well,
make any difference. There, statistically, the amount of coal being used is dropping steadily. It's not going back up, and it won't go back up. It's just too much more. It's so much more affordable to go with renewable energy sources, be it solar or primarily wind, probably being one of the more cost effective. That's the direction we're going. We're not going back to, a source that, okay, it got us, it kicked off the Industrial Revolution, but we left it behind the minute we dropped, coal to run our steam engines and we went to diesel fuel to run our locomotives. That's all where it began to change.
yeah. So anyway, I had a lot of people correct me on the fact of we released a video. We do our videos live. Bill and I are on live, and then we publish additional videos where these videos are cleaned up, have a little better resolution, they're edited, and anyways, we'll repurpose those videos. And some people came back and said, "Hey, that didn't get put in," which I was glad to know. I was glad
Yeah.
to find out that
Yeah.
that didn't happen because, you know, I'm all for the government saving money, but let's not be stupid here. I mean, some of this stuff just gets, um,
I listen.
dumb when you're
Yeah.
talking about selling off something they just bought
I,
and it's
I,
cheaper.
yeah, I listen. We obviously we had this terrible tragedy take place in West Texas, in the hill
Hmm.
country,
Oh, this is
with
terrible.
what are we at, over 100 people now? It's
Is it
just,
100 dead?
oh yeah, that's the latest I've
Last I
seen.
saw was 70. Okay.
No, I've heard the latest I saw was 100.
Wow.
Um, and I heard a guy commenting on the fact that Doge went through and it cut all these different positions and things. And he pointed out, he says, the national NOAA, right, the
Hmm.
National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, that manages the National Weather Service, that part of the government is so tiny part of the federal budget that it wouldn't if you did a pie chart, right,
Hmm.
you wouldn't even be able to see the wedge of the pie chart against all the other things. It is trivial, and yet it is so important because that's where the goal apparently is that if we get rid of the National Weather Service, we strip them, then we can have somebody come in and commercially operate that, and we'll set up a whole new cash flow, for private enterprise that doesn't have to go off in the form of tax. The problem is that who's going to operate the satellites? Who's going to operate the hurricane aircraft, right? Who's going to launch the boat? All these services that we take for granted are
Hmm.
such a trivial small part of the federal budget. Homeland Security now has a
Mhm.
bigger budget. I don't forget what the doubled or tripled, whatever the Homeland, so they can go on. Well, the guys that do the border control and all that,
Mhm.
they're all starting to get on a par with the U.S. military.
Hmm.
Whereas we're taking money away from this important service that the government provides for us to track hurricanes, to track tornadoes, which obviously impacts us, just so that somebody can set up a business and make a few more $1,000,000. I mean, there's some things that shouldn't be done by private enterprise. It should be done for the good of the nation. And I think my personal view is that's the role of the federal. That's the role of the government should be playing.
I saw some story about somebody was trying to claim that that was caused by people seeding the clouds, weather modification, but the companies said that they hadn't done any work
No,
in
no,
like the previous week
no.
before that.
Yeah,
And
I think Marjorie Taylor Greene was trying to get something introduced
mhm.
to outlaw the seeding of class. I assume. I mean, there's calls for this to be investigated. I'm certainly in favor of that because there's blame being thrown all over the place on this particular question. Were there enough advisors? Why didn't that particular community have uh, the what am I looking for here? The alarm system set up. Um, you know, I mean, who's to blame? And I suspect it's probably more than enough to go around for a lot of people here. Let's find out what happened and fix it, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. We're not like China where they go and they'll blame somebody and then execute them all, right?
Well, are you following what's going on in China right now?
Oh
Holy
no.
crap! Oh my, Xi Jinping is just about out.
Oh,
That
didn't
oh yeah,
realize that.
they're going on behind the scenes as is typical of the CCP. There's a lot of turmoil and turnover taking place, and then of course he's not unconscious. You see that another guy fell out the window in
Oh
Moscow,
God. Oh
right?
no. That's a problem. Russians are bad about falling out of tall
They're really
buildings.
bad about falling out of windows. Then the guy in charge of transportation, so whatever their version of the Department of Transportation, right, uh, uh, was found with a bullet in his head out in the middle of a field. But he also got fired. Now the problem was he killed himself before they announced he was fired. But anyway, this is
Yeah.
th- things there's turmoil taking place, generals being taken out, political people being fired, being sent to the gulag, and then we
Hmm.
got stability of the China now being questioned. So
Yeah.
hey,
The thing is, historically, when you got a leader that's like that in China, the obvious solution for them is to instigate a war with somebody. And because once they start the war, then people sort of rally around them. And I assume this is what was happening with Putin. Okay. He probably had really bad problems at home where he thought he was going to get kicked out. And the war with the Ukraine seemed like the way to fix that. That was always my assumption that was what was
yeah,
really going on.
that's probably what's going. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise
Yeah.
me.
And um, of course, he didn't expect it to last for 3.5
Oh no,
years.
it was gonna be a
It was supposed to be a three
cakewalk.
day deal.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, they're going to walk in there, be heralded, cheered by the people in Kiev. Yeah, 1 million casualties later, they
That's just
still
nuts.
haven't gotten anything. Moved really much beyond where they were prior to the invasion.
Yeah, that's probably more casualties than what the U.S. suffered in World War II.
Oh well, way more.
I know it's
What?
way more deaths. The
Oh,
U.S. suffered like 500,000 deaths in World War II, but I'm just saying that just overall total casualties, we probably didn't suffer a
They
million.
got
And
they got out of Afghanistan because they lost about 15,000 dead.
yeah,
And they have now over, including, I guess, casualties who would be killed in action, missing, and invalids that just can't go back and fight anymore. Although apparently they're taking guys with missing arms and in wheelchairs, and 70-year-olds
Hmm.
are now hobbling. Literally, there's video of a guy, 72-year-old guy in combat gear, hobbling to the front. That's what their army has gotten down. I mean, it's. But anyway, we're getting off track. I'm sorry.
No, I know. Yeah. Somehow we divested from the U.S. Postal Service to this. Yeah. So,
sorry, folks. Sorry about
yeah.
that.
Well, we were talking about how much of the U.S. Consumption is coal. So I thought next, let's talk about India. So India is
Yeah.
so the BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China.
Right.
S stands for some other countries. Um, Anyways, I forgot what that
South
stood for.
Africa.
Oh, there you go.
I think it's South Africa.
Could be. India highlights 4,000% solar growth, backs climate finance push at BRICS environmental meet. Modi said India was the first country to achieve its Paris Agreement commitments ahead of schedule, and that climate change and environmental protection remain top priorities. When I talk to my friend in the Indian government, they're everything. They're pushing even hydrogen, which is ineffective cost wise, but because they're really determined to make things work.
Yep.
And so they're putting the money into it, even though it may or may not be beneficial for it.
Yeah, I'm always seeing stories coming up now weekly of the number of electric buses that are being deployed by the various Indian states or the various Indian cities. 300 here, 500 there, 600 electric buses here. So they are making a serious effort.
There's no question.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, since we were talking about coal earlier, India is on track to increase its coal usage by 50% in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So while the U.S. it's going down, for India it's going up. But India has such a raw need for power that they're having to go to any source necessary. They're determined that they're going to be a modern country and have power 24 hours a day for everybody, just like the West does.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it's like in Europe. I don't know. I assume everybody has same access to electricity as we do in the United States. But it's such a big economic driver to have.
Oh yeah.
Access to electricity that it's really.
Now look at us. We're surrounded by it. I've got lights here, computers on. None of this would happen without dependable electrical power. So, I want to see these people. What is a third of the world population does not have access even to electricity, something like that. Some fairly significant number.
My lighting is 100% green, Bill.
I know. Good for you, man.
I have the windows open. I have my.
Well, yeah, I do. I do too.
I don't have any lights turned on.
Well, I have LEDs on, so it's not too bad. But I got light coming in over here, so.
Yeah, I'm sure it's really depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
But every country certainly has its different costs. Just like in the United States, I mean, we pay about 1/3 of what in Nebraska, what people pay for electricity in California or Hawaii. So it's a huge difference in cost. We pay like 12 cents and they're in the high 30 cents.
Yeah.
And it's a big difference depending on where you live.
Yeah, I think the average nationally is like 18 cents.
Mm-hmm.
So we're what? That's 30% below what the national average is here.
Yeah. So it's certainly much lower. But anyways, I'm just saying that it's a good thing for India. India is definitely trying. They've got the largest solar farm. The one guy from India keeps getting in trouble with the U.S. government, and Trump pardoned him, Adani. over some stuff, and he's gotten in trouble again since he got pardoned. Um, he's buying Iranian oil, and his ships
Yeah,
are doing weird maneuvers that
yeah,
the, the U.S. says only happens when somebody's breaking embargoes,
yeah.
and he's reprocessing it in India. And anyways,
And in the meantime, the Ukrainian drones are taking out the Russian, what do they call that fleet? The Ghost Fleet, something like that. They've lost, I think, two more ships in
taking out their
the
super
Black Sea.
tankers.
Yeah, well, they've got these off what they call these Russian tanker ships that are not officially registered to anybody apparently, that's what they move their oil in, right? And they turn
Hmm.
off their transponders so that they can, go to certain ports without being obviously, but they are recognized. But anyway, so the Ukrainians are using their either the Marine Sea Babies or whatever they call them, or they're using their long range drones now to take these. And of course, there's some speculation that there are saboteurs within the Russian economy who are deliberately sabotaging these ships so that when they get out into the Black Sea or in one of the straits somewhere, they suddenly catch fire.
Yeah,
It's
I don't know.
crazy.
It's amazing the technology development with drones and
Oh yeah,
everything from drone aviation. First it was the first person view drones
right.
that were just electric. Now they're going to these fiber optic drones, and some of these fiber optic drones, the fiber optic lines are like more than a mile long.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I mean, I just can't imagine because the people were jamming the remote drones,
right.
and I just
Uh,
how much fiber optic cable? I saw something that was just saying that the battlefields are like spider web covered with all of these
that
super
would
thin
not
fiber optic lines.
that would not surprise me. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what that must take to make those fiber optic lines. It can't be cheap, you know. But they're doing that so that they don't get jammed, and
Well,
it's harder to.
it's even smaller than fishing line, I would assume.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Some
just
type
hard
of
to.
a some type of a polymer. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if it's being made from plastic, recycled plastic?
It's probably made from petroleum. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Who knows? Um, but I just thought that was you know I don't know. It's just weird to see some of these advances in the technology, and it just
yeah.
keeps getting because it's gotten to the point where now I don't think there's as many like infantry assaults and stuff like that. Everything's just like waves of drones, and I know that I've heard them talking about as many as 1,000 Russian drones and missiles being launched at Ukraine civilians on a daily
They,
basis.
yeah, they just had another major launch. I think it was some 500, something like that, at Kiev. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's just nuts that it's so much of it is that I don't know how much of it's truly at civilian infrastructure. We always hear that, and I know that it's really hard not to have civilians get hit, but um, I always just wonder if they truly are targeting civilians or, you know, if it's
well,
just
from
getting in the
yeah,
way.
from the American reporters that are embedded in Kiev, right?
Hmm.
So I don't think they have any skin in the particular game, the outcome of the game. But they pretty well confirmed that most of the attacks that come are deliberately attacked. Hitting, what are civilian targets now? Whether that's poor targeting or whether that's deliberate, I suspect probably it's a little of both.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing. It's like how, the United States is so big on precision weapons now. I mean, like that whole thing in Iran where they were saying it's like, no, no, no. What we did was we dropped one bomb, then we dropped another bomb through the same hole, and then we dropped a third bomb down the same
through it.
hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it looked in the photographs, looks like there was 3 entry holes. No, there's only one entry hole. The other 2 are like exhaust ports from
Right.
their, oxygen system or something. They just kept dropping them right down.
Yeah, that's again, who do you believe there, right?
Yep.
Do you believe the guy Tusi TV, Mayor Tusi? I've been watching his things from London. Do you
Mhm.
believe him? Do you believe the Afghan, information minister was too? Well, yeah, maybe there was some damage done, but or do you believe the totally obliterated line? I've
Hard
listened
to
to
know.
I've listened to various military pilots who have one guy who says, here's like you pointed out, 3 bombs, bang, 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 bang. Because I think the depth of those massive ordnance, 5,000-pound
Penetrators.
bombs, the penetrators, is about 200 feet. So if you go 200 feet, then you hit another 200 feet or whatever. And then if you follow with that third one ought to get the job done. I mean, just the shock waves alone
Yeah.
should be enough. So, yeah. Well, anyway, we won't go. Let's move on. Enough of bombs and stuff. Let's talk about some positive things. For example,
All right, let's talk about Tesla. All right.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So in Turkey, Tesla sold precisely 0 cars in January. Now, obviously, we're in July, right? So January is not big news. Now, it's the hottest market, um, or it's one of the hottest markets for Tesla. It's actually our number 3 country in the world right now is Turkey. Now, what they did is they took a Model Y and they reduced from a 220 kilowatt bat or single motor to
Right,
160 kilowatts,
right.
and it
Still
gives it
plenty
a
of power.
lower, yeah, it gives it a lower special consumption tax. So it already has a price of 36,200 with this lesser motor, and but it took away some value added tax. Let's see. Um, The long range all wheel drive with dual motors costs about 45,000, but buyers need to, there's a 60%, they call it special consumption tax
Huh?
on top um, of the price. So that extra 60% would be an extra what, $27,000. So the cheaper one is at 36 and doesn't have that extra tax. It still has a tax, but it's only a 10% tax instead of a 60%
Yeah,
tax. Okay, so that 36,000 price goes to about 40,000 versus the other one going up to around 65,000 or
yeah,
70,000.
yeah.
So while it seems like it'd be an unlikely candidate, they sold 7,200 cars just last month in that
In
market, which
Turkey,
in Turkey, yeah.
I wonder whatever
Um,
happened to the Turkish EV. The French Renault had a factory there, and they started building. I think it's the Grand or something like that. They were building it, and then that kind of faded away after because Better Place was, or yeah, Better Place was using those cars, and then the Turkish government, I think Erdogan, came off and said, we're going to build our own car, but here's Tesla comes in now, and there, I'd like to know what's happening with the Turkish model. Is that having similar success or not?
yeah, well, it doesn't discuss that, but it does say that in the first half of the year in Germany, Tesla only sold 8,900 Teslas versus 12,300 in Turkey.
Hmm.
So it's interesting to see that
There's a
occurred.
lot. Interestingly, though, there's a lot of Turkish emigres that live in Germany, and I'm wondering if the word was getting back, right? And where are those cars coming from? Are they coming from China or are they coming from the German plant?
I'm assuming they're being manufactured in Germany.
That would be
That
my
would,
guess.
yeah, I'm pretty sure they're being made in Berlin. It does not get specific in the article, but there's another possibility. Somebody suspects Turkey could be a stopover before some of the vehicles are shipped to Russia, because Turkey's still neutral with
Yeah.
Russia and they share a border that which is kind of um, interesting that that would be a possibility. I don't know. That's
A lot
who
of
knows that.
questions. We'll have to kind of watch that market and see what happens with it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I want to talk about Maersk shipping. So
Yes,
Maersk is looking at renewable powered battery swaps for ships.
I thought you would like that one.
Yeah, oh, we love talking about boats.
Boats
Yeah,
and battery swapping.
yeah. So what's interesting is they were saying that there had been a 2024 assessment
Yeah.
by the Maersk McKinney Moeller Institute, exploring the potential for battery electric shipping. It said that battery powered ships are not only viable, but increasingly competitive, driven by falling battery prices, rising energy density, and straightforward integration of battery containers onto vessels. However, when they did that, the cost per kilowatt hour of
Yep.
battery storage was $300 per kilowatt hour. Now it's $51.
Now it's
It's gone
$51.
down
Yeah.
84% in
Yes.
1 year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the cost of battery storage is really plummeting to the point where, not just for the boat shipping, I mean, for solar and wind storage and stuff
Yep.
like that and base load power. Now, of course, a battery is not actually generating power, but it can store the power,
Right.
and it's a solution to go with the other technologies.
Well,
Um,
what I liked about this article was the fact he's saying, so we talked about this with hydrogen, right? You have the hydrogen boats out there, and as they're sailing across the Atlantic, they could be generating hydrogen that they could sell on the other end, supposedly. So
mhm,
where would you put? You have to have battery recharging stations, where the ship pulls in, and you either probably what you do is you just simply pull the battery off of the deck of the ship and replace it with another battery inside of a standard 40-foot shipping container. So the problem, where would you put those, right? And the guy is speculating, well, on the China North America route, you could have it in the Aleutians, right? So
yeah.
they'd make that grand tour and you could pop up, which by the way was only like what 40 miles off the Aleutian, one of the Aleutian islands, where the roll on, roll off ship carrying all those cars just sank.
Hmm.
But you could have that. And I was thinking, well, where would you do this in the Atlantic? Well, you got the Azores, you
Hmm.
got Bermuda, right? You got the
Iceland.
Canary Islands, you got Iceland. So all of those you could have wind farms set up and they could be generating electricity to be stored in those cargo vessel containers. So and then of course he goes on said, but even what makes more sense is do it in what he calls the choke points. So the Suez Canal, the Straits of Malacca, the Panama Canal, places like that where the ships are coming through, they're already confined. You just simply build a battery swap station, marine
Yeah.
scale, and you just swap them there. Oh, really
Hmm.
interesting. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but it's really interesting to see people thinking along this line. It's exciting.
Oh, you could certainly put some small modular reactors at those
Or
locations.
you could do small modular reactors. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's an interesting concept for the electric shipping. We talked about so much about like the sails and all these other things. I mean, the sails make a lot of damn sense, and it seems kind of goofy. It's like, well, let's go back 400 years in technology, but in reality, the new sails are like the guy just presses a button and the sails deploy. Presses a button and they go
Well,
back down.
and we understand the aerodynamics better. They didn't understand the air. They knew that, okay, if I sail at a certain angle and I have my sails adjusted to an angle that gets the most pull on the sail, or I get downwind where I get the wind coming
Hmm.
from behind me, that I can improve my sailing speed. But I'm always limited to the direction I can sail. So we understand now how that all works. We understand that there are
Hmm.
aerodynamic pressures that are taking place that are causing that sail to efficiently fill and move the boat in a certain direction. So that we understand, but there's always irons. If you're
Hmm.
going to wind, there's always going to be a point at which an angle at which you cannot trim the sails enough to get advantage of the wind. And that's where, of course, having electric propulsion. I mean, they did that with the old sailing ships. The original steamships were actually sailing ships with an auxiliary propulsion system, so that they didn't have to worry about getting in what are called the irons when you're in sailing. So that yeah, let's stick with the idea of the sails. And because of modern technology, we don't need, a crew of 100 or 200 people just simply to pull on the ropes to move the sails around, right? We don't
Right.
need that anymore, which is a huge reduction in the cost and of operating a ship that they had to, spend with the old mechanical, human powered system. We don't have to do that anymore. We've got other types of energy that we can replace, that we don't have to have that complex amount of rigging that they used to have. Anyway, I'm getting off track again. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if the sails need to be solar panels. There's a lot of ways you could put solar. There's things now I've seen where you can basically have solar that is like a mat that just it's like peel and stick tile, like you
Yeah.
put in your kitchen floor. Um, and they have those solar panels for boats now. So there's a lot of possibilities, but you know,
Sir, again, it's surface area and energy density. You
yeah,
have to have with any solar, you have to have a large amount of surface area because of the relatively low energy density of photons. Because that's what you're doing. You're taking photons and you're using those to knock electrons off of the underlying surfaces to generate the electricity that you need. And that takes a large amount of area.
yeah. Well, it's yeah, I think there's a lot of concepts that could be
Oh yeah.
incorporated in
And we're
something like
seeing them.
this.
That's what's exciting. We're seeing them.
Mhm.
I do all boats have to be electric? No, but the more that we can do that, the less other sources of energy we have to deploy, and whatever their back side effects are can be minimized, whether it's
Yeah,
diesel, whether it's ammonia, well, all whatever these suggested energy sources are for marine aviation, marine ships.
all right. Well, Bill, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover for today. So,
Oh, I got a
unless you
whole list of things here we could talk about, but let's save those
for
maybe till
Thursday.
the next time. How's that?
Yeah. All right, great.
Thanks,
Folks.
everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody for watching, and I'll be back with Mike tomorrow and Bill on Thursday. Otherwise, have a great day.